tell me a little bit about your music.
Well, I started making music in, I would say about middle school. Some programs came out on, like some software programs came out called, it was Hip Hop EJ, I think was like the first one. It was like on some disk drive, CD-ROM thing. And it was like
CD-ROM thing,
yeah, it was like some weird, I mean, it was like you had a floppy disk and then a CD-ROM. It was like, it was old. Like, and like, you had to like, it was like, it was very basic track, for track style production, using samples and loops and creating sequences. And then it was like, I got a program called Acid. I think I got the 1.0. And I mean, now they're up to like 6, 7, 8, who knows. And Fruity Loops eventually, which everybody's still using now. Those programs, I started like producing my own beats, doing hip hop with me and my friends. And weirdly, like I actually started creating like more like modern sounding EDM back in the 90s. Like it was all techno back then. I'm talking like DJ Karaoke and like Bad Boy Bill and I was getting into jungle and stuff like that. But then like I was writing like down tempo, like 80 BPM, 90 BPM, like hip hop beats with techno overlay, or like electronica, synth wave, like stuff that just sounded trip hoppy, or like nowadays, like you're hearing like stuff like, no way would I even say like put myself on the level of Bass Nectar, but stuff that had that like Getter, Bass Nectar kind of like vibe to it. It had that energy, and like, I was doing that way back in the 90s, and like nobody was getting it, and I was like, it's not into it, man. Like,
I'm not into it, man.
It's cool. Right? Just try new things. So in the Army, I actually still kept making beats and hip hop. I had a little group called Rebel Threat, because I started like, we had when I lived in Maine still before the military, I had a little rap group called Ill Behavior, and then it was just me and my buddy, and we were producing and rapping. And then when I went to the military, I started like a little makeshift indie label thing called Misbehaving Records, based off Ill Behaving, so it was Misbehaving Records. And then started a group called Rebel Threat with my buddy Hawk, who was another soldier, and this was in South Korea at the time. And we do stuff, and like I was DJing at the King Club, which was off post. It was like actually a Korean bar like that was like out in what we called the Ville. And like I got cool with Mama-san that run the place, and she eventually like let me DJ and just like paid me in drinks all night. I was cool with that. As long as I got back on post before 1 on the curfew, we were good. But so after I got out, I was out of the Army. I was still living in Nashville, Tennessee area. It was Clarksville, Tennessee, but it was like about 45 minutes north of Nashville, and I was working in that like circuit, doing like booking for other bands and stuff. And through that, I ended up hooking up with another band and I played keyboard for them, a band called Autumn Lies Buried. And like we played a few shows in the area, Nashville. Like I'd say the most, the best recognition I could say as far as the best lineup show that we had was with like Amur and Misery Index, like and those were pretty big for us. And then I ended up leaving the band, just like had some internal differences with people and stuff, as it always goes with stuff like that. And I kind of I kept playing guitar and stuff and just being a solo guitarist and not really being in anything. I moved back to Maine, didn't really have anybody in the area at the time, so I just kind of like noodled around on the guitar whenever I wanted, just out of hobby. I'd gotten so like deep in my skateboarding career at that point that like I just like that was all I cared about. And then I had an injury where I broke this finger's tendons, and my finger was stuck like that. It's called the Boutonniere's deformity. And I had to wear this special brace. It took me 6 months to train and get my finger to bend this way properly again. So like, and it was like really arthritic. It hurt a lot. It was really tight and tense. It was hard to get it to bend or to keep it straight. And it took me years to like really get it back to not feeling weird anymore and just forgetting there was anything ever wrong with it. And I just remembered picking up the guitar so many times between that, and the dexterity was gone, the muscle memory was gone. So whatever I told my finger to do, like wherever I could sit here and look at my finger and be like, we're gonna hit this string. Like, nope. Like it just wouldn't. Like, and I didn't know how to communicate, no matter how hard. Like it was no trick. It was just like literally the physical nerve damage that had been done to my finger at the time. Like at that point, I had nothing musical. There was like, I just listened to music. It's all I cared about. Going to concerts and skating my butt off. And going back to college, I was around a lot of audio engineers, and then my fraternity was full of a bunch of audio engineers. So they're kind of like hearing the language and being around it again started getting on. I think that inception, it just started getting in there. Fast forward to about a year ago, I started buying, like I was watching some videos, and I saw this thing. These two devices right here. This one is a Volca FM. It's a synthesizer that uses frequency modulation, and you basically get to build algorithms. It's like one of the nerdiest things I've ever gotten. Along with this right here, which was it's a sampler, and they're both from the same series, and they're a little battery powered. They look like toys. I can even play them. Like, yeah. This battery's dead here, but
That is pretty cool, man.
this is like a little synth. And like, you can sync them up just through a headphone jack. Like, this is super cool. But those are the first two things I got, because I wanted to be able to just go out anywhere I wanted, go to the waterfront, and just like, right. And I can hook them up to a speaker, that it's all battery powered. So I had like this, I was trying to build this whole like on the fly battery powered outfit. Yeah. And that's what I started with. And I got this Korg Monologue, which is another synthesizer, super powerful, made by Apex Twin. And it's probably my favorite like corner piece. It's kind of like the one thing I play the most. Like I've kind of become this like synth guy just because of this. And then I also got an MPC Live, which in itself, like, I had to make a decision. I was like, I don't have a computer, so what do I get? The MPC Live was kind of like my trick around a computer, because the MPC, it has the MPC program in it. It's Ableton inside of it. It has its own multi-core processor. So basically it's like having a laptop that you can't go to a desktop on.
Right.
And I have to externally patch, So I went ahead and got that. I dropped $1,300 on it, and just like that was my balls in piece. Mm-hmm. And then I got this Behringer mixer. It's a DDM 400, which is a super cool mixer. It's got a sampler built into it, and it's got all these wicked cool effects. I honestly still haven't even scratched the surface of what I can do with it in the year that I've had it. Yeah. But collecting up all this stuff, I started just kind of getting back into the groove. I wanted to make really almost like, I'm influenced by like Bass Nectar and your EDM, like your typical EDM, like trappy style EDM stuff. And I started listening to art. When I was making my art, I was listening to a lot of like Kyla, Cytelia, and some of these like other Sibiant style groups, Spangle, and it really like, those were like the big inspirations. I was like, man, I really want to make music. So I got these little devices, and since then I've built up to this whole setup that I have. I got turntables again, and I didn't mention earlier, I used to have turntables back in the day too. That was like just a thing I had. It wasn't anything I used for performance. It was a hobby. I just had them.
Yeah.
And I like to scratch a lot just for my own like fun. So like since then I've kind of brought that back into my whole little solo act, and the music I'm trying to make now is a lot more like down tempo, like hip hop, like tempos,
Nice.
hip hop style beats, but using like heavy synth.
Yep.
And waveforming, getting into like just really trippy, like space age sounding cosmic stuff.
Yes.
I'm almost kind of like, I mean, if there isn't a name for like my specific style yet, I'm calling it groove step.
Yes, I like that.
Because it's got that groove
I actually
to it.
have a couple songs that I'm going to talk to you about, because there's a couple ones that I wrote, and that's kind of more of the flow of kind of quick, like 8-bar like drop verses, and having it just drop to like heavy like beats where you just can kind of ride out.
I'm trying to make hip hop beats for aliens, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm inspired by people like Andy Warhol. You know, like I don't want to just be an artist that's an artist alone. Like I want to be part of more of a movement of artists to like inspire other artists. That like, you know, I think one of the things that crushes me the most is when I hear somebody look at my art and like they say, I wish I could do that. I wish, and I'm like, you can't. You just like, you got to go through all the investing in the consequences again. Like, don't be afraid to make a mistake. Don't be, you know, nobody's going to be a critic to you harder than yourself.
Yeah.
You know, they can say what they want, you know, but at the end of the day, like, if it's your expression, how can anybody tell you what's wrong?
That's true.
And I want to kind of inspire more people to be like, you know, in that mindset. I think we're rapidly seeing a generation of people become less and less inspired, you know, because it's all like, you know, in their hands. They can click at it. It's like, it's even hard to sell art anymore because people can just share it on Facebook and call it good enough. You know, they'd rather get a tattoo that they cover up. They don't share with anybody. You know, they'll spend $1,200, you know, on these mural pieces of tattoo art that, like, again, like, it, you know, you don't get to show off unless it's a nice sunny day or whatever. And you know, you don't get to, it doesn't go anywhere after you're gone either, you know, unless you're just one of those weirdos that wants their skin inside of a frame. But, you know, I might be down on that, actually. But.
Well, and it's true, and that's part of like what the art life movement is trying to intertwine, you know, music and art in a way where we can create a platform to cross network and to be able to cross over those boundaries. And we're trying to revitalize that scene and change that perspective of art, you know what I mean, and get the youth and get the people more interested in art and the story behind the art and what art actually represents. And also recognizing that money is an energy exchange, art is an energy exchange.
Yes.
And, you know, being able to represent that as like this free-flowing exchange of existence, you know, and people being able to represent that value. Like, everybody wants us artists out there creating art. And so for that to happen, everybody has to be able to chip in to help us succeed and help us keep going, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the flip side of it. Like, you know, I know you've done some collaborations, it sounds like, obviously, throughout your career. Like, what are some of the ways, like, moving forward that you can envision yourself, like, collaborating with other artists? Or is there, like, projects you have in mind? Or?
Yeah, I actually have a few big, like, projects that are happening right now, musically wise. I have my solo project, which is very much focusing on trying to find a merge between my visual art and my music and try to give this multi-sensory kind of experience for people where I can make music and maybe even do live art at the same time, and using light shows, use of video and projection. And I even have some ideas that I'm not going to necessarily put out there right now about some stuff, but that would open up to a more literal multi-sensory. I'm talking about sense of smell and taste also being invoked in these art performances.
Wow.
Getting dancers and other, you know, props involved to put on more of a theatric production as opposed to just like, I'm going to go up there and stand and, you know, make music and have a light show, you know, which is your typical DJ, you know, aspect. I'm trying to really broaden what I can do artistically. And then the second project kind of takes that and elaborates it to a higher level with this band that I've begun called The Scientists. It's basically a band of DJs. You've got bands that each member plays an instrument. Like you got the guitarist, he's playing the guitar. That's his job. That's what he's playing. Drummer, drums. Singer, maybe he picks up a tambourine, but like there's everybody's got their one instrument. And a DJ in a live production sense becomes almost more of a composer with a symphony, an electronic symphony in front of them, and you're composing these parts together and intertwining. So imagine how badass it would be if you had 3 composers.
Yeah.
And they each have their own symphony. So, that's kind of where I'm going with this band is I've got 3 DJs all with our own separate workstation linked up through Ableton, and we all play. And then we also have my buddy who plays guitar playing through like an effects pedal and plugged into a looper and he got a chaos pad. So he basically can create loops with certain effects and then go in and modulate and fade it in and out, and if we want, we can like send auxiliaries and sends, and I can basically hijack anybody's sound at any point, bring it into mine and start doing manipulations. And we basically will live not only compose, like we'll start a song, make it up on the spot, but then as we go into it, we start remixing it. Like
that is awesome.
Yeah, it gets really.
So and in a way, every single show would be a different experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And and like so, one guy, like we each kind of have our own little instrument that's our key thing, and one guy has an aerophone that's like hooked in through his Ableton, which is basically an electronic saxophone, like synthesizer. My other buddy plays bass, puts loops through, and will modulate. And, it gets really expansive to like what we can do with our sound. And like we've spent a lot of time improvising over the last like year, but this last 2 months we kind of we're like, okay, stop. We're gonna go back to the studio. And every Sunday, we're basically having these workshops where we're like actually trying to build an album. And we have an idea of basically all of our songs are all stories. Every single song's a story. Every single live improv that we do, we're telling a story. And what we'll do is we'll animate video, and like that's our goal is to basically take these songs and create like shorts and scores. Like, so we might have a concept song, we might have a series of concept songs, we might have an EP that's just got a bunch of singles. They're each their own story, but we're even going to do a whole album that's like literally a story, like the whole thing through. But going along with that, I want to go and make like comics. So I'll have a comic that you can read to the song, and you're basically going to have a soundtrack that you can read along.
That's awesome.
And hear this track while you read this graphic novel.
I love stuff like that because it's like being able to, I mean, I guess it goes to everything you're doing with like the visual art, tying everything in together, because we believe that art life is a representation of your lifestyle. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Being an artist is for everyone is an artist, and the way that we live our lives is our art form. And like, this is just a manifestation of your lifestyle, of who you are as a person, your spirit, how you've been able to take your experiences and transform them into something like this to manifest in front of us. Thinking back on sort of what we were talking about is like artists trying to survive and like trying to, create this culture of, how can we have this balance where we can be full-time artists and we can be supported. How can we as artists reach more people? Like, how can we reach out to these people in a bigger way as a collective?
Yeah, I think that is our challenge for this period of time. And I think the big thing is creating the right model of marketing, along with like this is why I really like what you guys are doing, because I've always thought about how the music industry and the movie industry, they have agents and they have firms and they have labels that represent their artists, and I don't really see anything expansive like on the art industries as a whole. Like, I mean, there may be out there, but like you're not seeing like the magnitude of something like a Death Row Records or like, Interscope or all these other, Def Jams. You have these labels that can represent people and put the money behind them. We don't have that in art as for fine art, and like I said, and if there is, it's very minute. It's very, it's very minority in its own. So I think there needs to be more of that. I think there needs to be more investment in creating representation to make sure that artists are getting paid, that they're not getting ripped off, that, YouTube's all over, shutting down a video, or, Facebook's all quick on shutting down a video that has an algorithm of 2 seconds long enough to figure out that it was some song that you don't have a copyright for. But why are you allowed to share all these images that are copyright, images? Like, nobody's stopping people from sharing my art. Not that I don't want that. I absolutely love the fact my art gets shared, and please do share my art.
Yeah.
But the fact that we can't have that same level of respect and security to our personal affect.
Yeah. No, and it's true. And I think that, with what part of what our movement is about is recognizing that art as a whole plays such a pivotal role in our existence as humans. I think for the longest time, society tried to kind of drag us away from that fact and tried to put us in these boxes. But I think that you can see it as a clear representation. I mean, anybody can just run their own study of observation when you see how people interact with music, with art, with, events, what it brings out in people. To be able to see that, I think it's so obvious to me what a big role it plays in, furthering with help with addiction, with depression, with, society moving in the right direction, with morality, with all of these different life challenges that we face. Through art and passion, we can navigate through them. And I think that we as artists need to start working together, and that's what Art Life is all about.